This news is funded by viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's military has ordered hundreds of thousands of Palestinians to evacuate their homes or face death as it launches a fresh ground offensive in the northern Gaza Strip. The latest mass evacuation order came on the first anniversary of the start of Israel's brutal assault on Gaza following Hamas's surprise attack on October 7th. Over the weekend, at least 26 Palestinians were killed after Israeli forces attacked a mosque and a school sheltering displaced people in Deir al-Balah. Elsewhere, at least 9 children were among 17 killed when Israel's military bombed the Jabalia refugee camp. Many residents were unable or unwilling to leave their homes.
I am staying here. Where else would I go? I want to die here. As long as they say that evacuation is forbidden, where will I go? We are staying. If they want us to die, so be it. And I suffer from osteoarthritis. Where do I go?
On Sunday, an Israeli artillery shell struck the home of 19-year-old journalist Hassan Hamad in Jabalia, killing him. In recent weeks, Hamad had received death threats via WhatsApp from an Israeli number. He also received phone calls and text messages from an Israeli officer ordering him to stop filming. Hassan Hamad is at least the 175th Palestinian journalist killed in Gaza since last October. He's among at least 41,900 Palestinians killed over the past year in Gaza. Another 97,000 have been injured, according to Gaza's health ministry, though those figures are certain to be a vast undercount. Dozens of massive explosions rocked the Lebanese capital overnight Sunday, marking Israel's heaviest bombardment on Beirut and the city's southern suburbs since Israel widened its war on Lebanon 2 weeks ago. Earlier today, Israeli warplanes bombed a fire station in the town of Beirut, killing at least 8 people. On Sunday, Hezbollah fired rockets at the Israeli port city of Haifa, wounding at least 10 people. Israel's assault has now displaced 1.2 million people in Lebanon, after headlines will go to Beirut for the latest. In Israel, the loved ones of hostages took to the streets over the weekend, blocking traffic in Tel Aviv, holding protests marking the 1-year anniversary of the October 7th Hamas attack. Over 1,100 people were killed in Israel in the Hamas-led attacks a year ago, while at least 250 were taken hostage. Around 100 of the hostages remain in Gaza, though only 70 of them are still believed to be alive. 105 hostages were released by Hamas during a temporary ceasefire in November. This is Yael Or, whose cousin Dror was killed 1 year ago, but whose body remains held in Gaza.
Why are they still in Gaza a full year later? Because of Netanyahu. Netanyahu wants to stay in power forever, and to do that, he has dragged Israel into eternal, never-ending war. This means that our hostages have been abandoned in Hamas death tunnels deep under Gaza. Netanyahu has committed crime against his own people.
Later in the broadcast, we'll speak with Israeli peace activist Maoz Inan, who lost both his parents in the October 7th attack. We'll also speak with Aziz Abu Sarah, a Palestinian peace activist. Together, Maoz and Aziz have traveled the world, met with the Pope and U.S. Congress members, calling for an end to the occupation, an end to war, and calling for a permanent ceasefire. French President Emmanuel Macron says France is no longer sending arms to Israel and called on other nations to halt deliveries of weapons.
Néanmoins, nous essayons aussi d'être cohérents.
However, we also try to be consistent, and when we call for ceasefires, this is the case for Gaza. This was also the case for Lebanon last week. Well, we try not to call for a ceasefire while continuing to deliver weapons of war, and I think it's just consistency.
Meanwhile, in an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes, Vice President Kamala Harris defended U.S. military aid to Israel, which soared to a record $17.9 billion over the past year. A senior Pentagon official warned the White House last October that Israel's plan to uproot more than 1 million Palestinians from their homes in Gaza would be a humanitarian disaster and could violate international law, leading to war crime charges against Israel. That's according to Reuters, which reports the warning came in an October 13th email to the White House from Dana Stroul, then the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. Stroul wrote that an assessment by the Red Cross predicting a humanitarian catastrophe from Israel's mass expulsion order had left her chilled to the bone. Despite those concerns and similar dire warnings from the State Department's Bureau of Democracy, Labor, and Human Rights, the White House expedited the transfer of weapons to Israel, including thousands of precision-guided missiles and 2,000-pound bombs. Meanwhile, Drop Site News is reporting Secretary of State Antony Blinken last October signed off on a plan by Israel to bomb trucks bringing humanitarian aid into Gaza. Blinken's approval came after he joined an emergency meeting of Israel's war cabinet at the Israeli military headquarters in Tel Aviv last October 16th and 17th. After the talks, cabinet member Bezalel Smotrich said, quote, "We in the cabinet were promised at the outset that aid trucks hijacked by Hamas and its organizations would be bombed from the air and the aid would be halted," he said. Hundreds of thousands of protesters marched in cities across the world Saturday to demand an end to Israel's brutal assault on Gaza and its widening war on Lebanon. Huge crowds flooded the streets of London, Berlin, Paris, Istanbul, Melbourne, Australia, Cape Town, South Africa, and Karachi, Pakistan, in solidarity with Palestinians. Here in the United States, protesters rallied in downtown Washington, D.C., near the White House. This is Anissa Dawoodi of the Palestinian Youth Movement.
Our role here in the United States, and specifically here in Washington, D.C., is to uplift the demand for an arms embargo on Israel, and is to demand that our politicians, the Biden administration, and the next administration, whoever that may be, to end all U.S. aid and end its complicity in this genocide. We know that without the financial backing and the diplomatic cover that the U.S. is providing on Israel, we know that this genocide would not have been possible.
At Saturday's rally near the White House, photojournalist Samuel Mina Jr. of Arizona was hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries after he lit his left arm on fire in an act of protest. Ahead of his self-immolation, Mina spoke of his guilt over participating in biased media coverage of Gaza, writing, quote, "How many Palestinians were killed that I allowed to be branded as Hamas? How many men, women, and children were struck with a missile co-signed by the American media?" The graduate of the Cronkite School of Journalism in Arizona asked. The Dominican Republic says it will immediately begin expelling up to 10,000 undocumented Haitian residents a week, despite warnings from the UN and rights groups about the worsening security and humanitarian situation in Haiti. The Dominican President, Luis Abinader, has made cracking down on Haitian communities and on his country's border with Haiti a central pillar of his presidency. The UN reported last month at least 3,660 people were killed in Haiti in the first half of this year due to gang violence. Just last week, a gang attack in central Haiti killed at least 70 people and displaced some 6,300 Haitians. In Mexico, the new mayor of Chilpancingo, capital of Guerrero State, was murdered Sunday, just days after taking office. Alejandro Arco's death came 3 days after the city's new secretary, Francisco Tapia, was shot dead. At least 6 candidates for public office in Mexico were killed in the lead-up to this year's June elections. Mexico's new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, who was inaugurated a week ago, has vowed to take on the homicide crisis and organized crime. In the United States, residents of Florida are once again evacuating their homes as Hurricane Milton barrels towards Florida's Gulf Coast, threatening major storm surges and widespread destruction around Tampa Bay and other areas. Milton is projected to make landfall by midweek as a Category 3 storm. This comes as the death toll from Hurricane Helene climbed to 232 people across 6 states. Donald Trump seized on the disaster to push misinformation about the Biden-Harris administration on the campaign trail, lying that federal authorities are denying help to Republicans in the stricken areas and that federal funds are being diverted from recovery efforts to house immigrants. Federal and local officials have taken to the airwaves to refute Trump's, quote, dangerous narrative. This is Tennessee Governor Bill Lee.
There's no confiscation of supplies or of products coming in by FEMA or TEMA. There's nothing but commitment to serving the people in this state. And those who spread that kind of misinformation, it's deeply unfortunate that that's happening.
That's Tennessee's Republican Governor Bill Lee. Meanwhile, The Intercept reports prisoners in North Carolina were left in their cells without running water or power for nearly a week, cut off from communication with the outside world and forced to keep their waste in plastic bags in their cells. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.